Hello, I'd like to call the second day of the Board of Psychology meeting to order. We are in Berkeley at the Wright Institute. Ms. Berteau, can you please call the roll?
Good morning. Kasuga.
Here.
Cervantes.
Here.
Fu.
Here.
Harb-Sheets.
Here.
Nystrom.
Here.
Rogers.
Here.
Tate.
Here.
Roll is complete.
Thank you, and quorum is established. 2 reminders before we jump in. Restrooms are out the door to the left down the hall. And of great importance, Ms. Berteau, can you please let us know about how to document our CPD credit?
Thank you, Dr. Tate. Before I give you my CPD spiel, for those of you who were here yesterday, I wrote down the correct amount of CPD and said the wrong amount. So I just wanted to correct. It's 2.5 hours of CPD for yesterday, Thursday, if you were here for the full time. Okay, so attending today's board meeting provides you with CPD credit under category number 1, attendance at a California Board of Psychology meeting. For your CPD records, please notate today's date as August 16th, 2024, and note that we are here for the board meeting. At the conclusion of business today, I will announce how many hours or portion thereof you can be credited. Back to you, President Tate.
You keep calling me professor, so I kind of like that. I heard it. We're going to dive into agenda item number 16. This is public comment for items not on the agenda. The board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Before I invite speakers to come forward for public comment, I would ask individuals making comments to not discuss the specifics, including names as to pending complaints, pending licensing applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may come before the board for a decision. Such discussions are considered ex parte communications, as they could provide information to the members that is outside of the record. This is in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. While there may be a desire to engage in further discussion with comments presented during this time, we may not discuss or take action. Although this may give the impression we are not being responsive, these procedures are critical to ensure the compliance with the Open Meetings Act and to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. If you are interested in making a comment, can you just raise your hand so I can... We're good? Okay. Just asking again, anyone interested in making public comment, please come forward and have a seat. Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn the meeting over to cover items that were not covered yesterday. These are action items for the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee. And today with us we have Dr. Cervantes.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. Good morning, everyone. A little closer? Okay. Sorry, folks. Okay, here we go. Agenda item number 11, Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee report and consideration of committee recommendations. Most of these items were discussed yesterday. We're going to start with item 11B, review of bills for active positions, recommendations to the board. Item B, 1, SB 1451, Ashby, Professions and Vocations. This item begins on page 189 of the combined packet. Mr. Polk?
Thank you and good morning. Senate Bill 1451 was introduced by Senator Ashby. Senate Bill 1451 would make various changes to the operations of programs governed by Practice Acts and the Business and Professions Codes and various professionals regulated by different programs. Stemming from prior sunset review oversight efforts, however, Section 2 of the bill would also make changes which would clarify that no person shall use the word doctor or physician, the letters or prefix DR, the initials MD or DO, or any other terms or letters indicating or implying that the person is a physician or surgeon, or practitioner in a healthcare setting that would mislead a patient to determine that a person is a licensed MD or DO. The Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Committee approved a recommendation that the board take a oppose unless amended position on SB 1451 based on the language that was introduced and presented to the committee at that time. The recommendation was based on concerns of licensees not being able to use the term doctor or the initial DR as the requested amendments. And at the time, there was requested amendments that would clarify language that licensees would be able to use the term or initials as related to doctor as long as the licensees were not being misleading. However, on June 19th, Senate Bill 1451 was amended to authorize certain licensees to use the words doctor or physicians, the letters or prefixes DR or the initials MD or DO, as these new requirements would apply to a person holding a current and active license under another healing arts board to the extent to use the use of the title as consistent with the act governing the practice of that license. These amendments were found to provide the clarity and addresses the issues raised during the committee discussion. And with these recent amendments, there's a staff recommendation that the board consider a support position on SB 1451, as this bill would protect the public from practitioners who may be misleading in their professional title, while licensees under the psychological profession can continue to use the term doctor or the initial DR.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Do I hear a motion to adopt a support position to SB 1451?
So moved.
Thank
I'll
you,
second.
Dr. Rogers and Dr. Tate. Can we have public comment?
Oh, could I ask a board comment? I have a
Oh,
question.
yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Board-
I have a question. So does this mean that if someone has a doctoral degree but is not licensed by our board, let's say, they cannot use that title, doctor, in their advertising per se? Because nowadays we have people, maybe they're licensed by the BBS, maybe they're not licensed, but they're still, like maybe they're advertising themselves as coaches, but they call themselves Dr. So-and-so because they have a doctorate. And would this preclude that?
So I can try to take a stab at this. So the main thrust behind sort of these changes is to clarify the ambiguity. And the ambiguity that existed prior was you're not a surgeon, but you're using the term doctor. Okay, that creates, as you know, a huge level of ambiguity. These changes try to clarify that unless you're essentially misrepresenting the use of the term, you're fine. So in your example, that candidate has the degree and is not misrepresenting how they are putting themselves out to the public
Okay.
in line with that degree. That's not going to be a concern here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just one other quick point. This is the Medical Practice Act that this legislation refers to. So this is for their enforcement purposes. If someone uses the term doctor, it's the prerogative of the medical board to interpret this language to apply it to their enforcement authority. I don't know if that
Yeah,
helps kind of add a little
that
extra
helps.
context.
Thank you.
So, and just to tag on to that's also to show a bit of a window in as to how they are or aren't going to enforce this, right?
Which was some of the concerns raised in our discussions. So I was pleased to see that they made some good amendments to clarify. Thank you. Any other board comment or questions?
I'll be recusing myself on item 11 in the entirety.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, now we can open public comment for item 11B. B1, we're discussing SB 1451 Ashby. Is there public comment on this item?
Hi, Dr. Elizabeth Winkleman with the California Psychological Association. Just wanted to thank the board for considering the support of SB 1451 and to note that the California Psychological Association had also initially taken an oppose unless amended position because it was going to restrict the use of the appropriate and use of the term doctor for our licensees and also psychology trainees with the doctoral degree, and that we had worked in a coalition to get these amendments taken. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, can we call for the vote on the motion to adopt a support position to SB 1451, moved by Dr. Rogers and second by Dr. Tate?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
The motion carries. Thank you. And then the next action item we're going to discuss is item 11C, number 2. No, number 1. Is it number 1 or number 2? 2. Number 2. Okay, sorry, folks. All right, so this is AB 1991, Bonta License and Registration Records, and I believe this item starts on page 230? 268. 268. Sorry, I wrote it wrong here on my, no, I didn't. I got it. 268 in the combined packet. Mr. Polk, do you have an update for us?
Yes, thank you. Assembly Bill 1991 was introduced by Assemblymember Bonta. This bill was introduced to require certain boards that regulate healing art licensees or registrants to collect workforce data from their respective licensees or registrants, and would require the data to be provided at the time of electronic license or registration renewal. And at that time, it was introduced that it made it appear that if a licensee's registrant failed to produce that information at time of renewal, that it could lead to an enforcement action. However, AB 1991 was amended to prohibit certain boards from denying renewal if the workforce data was not provided. The board did adopt a opposed position on AB 1991, and staff did submit letters in opposition to the different committee members as well as the author's office. On July 2nd, AB 1991 was further amended, and which passed the Appropriations Committee. The amendments at that time included that only the national provider identifier would now have to be required if the licensee has one at the time of registration, and that failing to provide that national provider number would no longer constitute a crime or would require enforcement action. Since AB 1991 went through substantive amendments, staff did remove the board's opposed position, and staff is now recommending that the board review and possibly reconsider a position on AB 1991.
Thank you, Mr. Polk. Is there any board comment? Mr. Fu?
Yes. Mr. Polk, when you say reconsider the position, do you have a position that you would like us to support, oppose? So, or is the reconsideration from opposed to watch?
Yes, the recommendation, being adopted as opposed was removed, and the recommendation would be to watch the bill.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fu and Dr. Tate. It's been moved to adopt a watch position on AB 1991. And any other board comment? Seeing none, can we open for public comment on this item? Is there any public comment? Seeing none, can we call for a vote on this motion to watch AB 1991?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom recusal. Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
The motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And then the next item we have for discussion is item 11D, number 5, SB 999 Wiener, health coverage, mental health, and substance use disorders. Mr. Polk, do you have an update for us?
Yes, so Senate Bill 1999 was introduced by Senator Cortesian. I know the memo says Senator Wiener, but he's a co-author on the bill. Senate Bill 1999 would require health plans and insurers that provide coverage for medically necessary treatment of mental health and substance use disorders to ensure that utilization review determinations and appeals are determined by a healthcare provider that has appropriate training and relevant experience in the clinical specialty and diagnosis. Also requires them to maintain telephone and other direct access during California business hours for a provider, and allows them to request authorization and conduct peer-to-peer discussion and disclose the name and credentials of the reviewer. The basis for denial, including a citation to the clinical guidelines, is reviewed. An analysis of why the patient did not meet the criteria is also required. On May 21st, Senate Bill 1999 passed the Senate and was ordered to the Assembly, which was then referred to the Committee on Health on May 28th. Senate Bill 999 passed the Health Committee and was referred to the Appropriations Committee on June 12th. And at that time, on August 7th, it was referred to the suspense file. As of yesterday, the 15th, the bill was held in the Appropriations Committee under submission.
Thank you. Is there any board comment?
Yes, so this bill was discussed during the committee meeting, and we at that time voted in committee to watch the bill. And then there was a public comment that I just wanted to bring to the whole board with regards they brought up that what has been happening with regards reviews for whether someone can for instance have mental health treatment or therapy. Someone that approves that for the insurance companies can be someone who isn't necessarily a psychologist or practicing in the same area. So what happens is, like, for instance, if it's an ABA, denial for ABA therapy, denial for mental health treatment, it's done by, let's say, an RN who may not have experience or really isn't in the field that they're denying services for. So this bill is a little bit related to the practice of psychology, in that it will affect access if people are being denied because someone who isn't a psychologist is saying someone doesn't need therapy. That's why I wanted to bring it back to the whole board, because normally we do not comment on bills that is related to insurance, except for a few times when it's with regards parity to mental health, because we wanted to make sure that we're supporting bills that improves access to mental health services, because not getting access to services harms consumers of psychological services, and things like this fall into that access issue. So I just wanted to bring it back to the board for consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other board comment? Is there any other, seeing none, I think we're done with this item. Is there any other bills listed on our watch list?
You need public comment for that item?
Okay, we can take public comment. Is there public comment on SB 999? Cortese. No public comment? Seeing none? Is there any other items on our watch list that any of the board members would like to discuss? You probably went through this yesterday, but I'm just double checking. We're good on that item? Okay, Thank you. Did we discuss item number 12 on the agenda yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. So then item number 13 is the regulatory update, review, and consideration of additional changes. Item A is 16 CCR sections 1391.13 and 1391.14 and inactive psychological associates, registration and reactivating a psychological associate registration. Mr. Polk.
Thank you. In the hand carry, you will find the updated materials for this item, which includes the updated meeting memo as well as the revised language. This regulatory package would allow registered psychological associates to place their active registration on an inactive status to stop the clock of the 72-month limit on the registration instead of fully canceling the registration to stop the clock if there's a disruption in providing services or supervision. This package is in the final stages of the regulatory process. Board staff, in working with Regulatory Council, submitted the final documents to the Regulations Coordinator. Then the package was then submitted to the Office of Administrative Law for final review and approval on June 27th. In discussions with the Office of Administrative Law, minor changes were presented regarding the proposed language for clarity of the language and the process. Staff, in working with the Regulatory Council, withdrew the regulatory package to modify the language with the minor changes that were brought up in the discussion, just to make it clear and more concise to registrants based on the notes and advice received from the Office of Administrative Law. Attached to the meeting materials is the revised language, and the new revised language is highlighted in the attachment. Regulatory Council also provided motion language. If you'd like, I can present the motion now.
Yes, please.
Sure. The board is asked to consider the modified regulatory text for Title 16 of California Code Regulations sections 1391.13 and 1391.14 and entertain a motion to approve the modified regulatory text. Direct staff to take all necessary steps to complete the rulemaking process, including preparing modifying text for additional 15-day comment period, which includes amendments discussed at this meeting. If after the 15-day public comment period, the board does not receive comments providing objections or adverse recommendations specifically directed at the proposed action or to the procedures followed by the board in proposing or adopting the action, then the board authorizes the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes to the proposed regulations in the rulemaking file and adopt the proposed regulations as described in the modified text notice of California Code Regulations, Title 16, Section 1391.13 and 1391.14.
So moved. Thank you to Mr. Polk and the
Wu.
regulatory.
Second.
And Dr. Kasuga. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any board comment? Staff, thank you.
Sorry, not board comment, but I just want to let the folks in the audience know a little quick synopsis of what this regulation does. We've been talking about this for some time now. But what this package does is it allows a registered psychological associate to pause their registration so that the accumulated time when they don't have a supervisor doesn't count against their 72-month limitation. So I just wanted to add that little brief synopsis as a reminder of what this does.
Thank you. I am really glad we're at this point. This was there was a lot of this matter came up from stakeholders often in recent years, especially with the pandemic. So I'm glad we're at this point. Is there any other comment from staff or board members? No? Then is there public comment on this item? Seeing none, can we call the vote?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, I think this concludes my report. Oh, no, wait. Hold on, we got one more item. I got excited there. Item 13G is on sections 1390 and 1390.14 of Division 13.1 of Title 16 of the California Code of Regulations. This is regarding research psychologist regulation, discussions, and possible approval of proposed language and licensure application forms related to SB 815. Mr. Polk.
Thank you. This regulatory package updates the regulations for research psychoanalysts from the medical board to the board's regulations with non-material changes. On May 10th, the board approved the adoption of the amended regulations with non-material changes added for necessity and clarity to move the current regulations from the Medical Board of California to the Board of Psychology. In discussions with Regulatory Counsel and the Fiscal Office, the previously approved language contained the outdated application fees that were previously updated in Senate Bill 815 that was passed last year. And it was recommended that the board review and approve the recommended language with current fees. The revised language is included in the meeting materials for this item. Included in the attachment is the revised language that includes the correct and current fees amount in section 1390.11, and the revised language is highlighted.
Okay. Is there any board comment?
Dr. Cervantes?
Yes.
So Dr. Phillips and I are on the Research Psychoanalyst Ad Hoc Committee, and so we had reviewed the language before the exclusion, I should say, of the updated licensing fees. The board then saw the language at the previous board meeting. We're just coming back to update on that language that Mr. Polk just referenced with the inclusion of that licensing fee on page I was going to say 9 of 10, but I'm looking at the individual
622.
package. There we go, thank you, which is 1390.11. So that's the highlighted language there. And I would move that we approve the highlighted language in attachment number 1 in 1390.11.
Thank you.
I second.
So it's been moved by Mr. Fu and second by Dr. Kasuga to adopt the language proposed on page 622 of the combined packet, stating that the registration fee will be $150 and the biennial fee will be $75. Is there any further board comment on this item? Seeing none, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none, can we call for the vote?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harb Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. There was countless of hours of labor that went into the items I reported on, so I just want to thank everybody for all of their work, my fellow board members for being thorough and thoughtful and diligent in their analysis and preparation as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Cervantes. We're going to jump to agenda item number 17. This is the California Practice Examination Feasibility Information prepared by the Office of Professional Examination Services. Ms. Chung, please.
Can I ask a question before Ms. Chung presents on what Ms. Berteau said earlier about continuing professional development credits?
Go ahead.
Which is, there's a 2-hour difference that was made, and I just want to clarify and hopefully reassure that folks who may end up being short on hours by 2 because of the incongruence on what was stated will not have disciplinary action or any audit action language taken to them, or that there'll be follow-up so that they are recorded appropriately. I know that's an area of sensitivity, having been on this board.
Thanks for asking about that. I have everybody's information, and I've started contacting people directly just to make sure that they know that they have the correct amount.
And I'm not sure where this would go in processes, but in the event that even after you contacting them,
Sure.
and there appears to be a 2-hour difference when they are audited,
I will make a note in our saved documents. Yes.
great. I think it would be important for us to show some grace.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fu. And you're right, it is an area of sensitivity. Ms. Chung, thank you.
Thank you, Board President. Good morning, board members. At the 2023 May board meeting, the board voted to adopt the two-part examination of professional practice of psychology, which we know as EPPP. The board also directed staff to conduct an analysis of developing a California practice exam to be reported at this meeting. So as a follow-up, board staff reached out to the Office of Professional Examination Services, OPES, for information regarding the development of a California practice examination. And staff learned about what it would take for the initial development of a California practice exam and break it down into process, workload, and cost for the board's reference. So regarding process, OPES staff explains that the examination development comprises of two steps, beginning with an occupational analysis, which we usually call OA. So the OA takes about a year to complete, including 3 workshops, requiring a total of 32 to 40 subject matter experts, SMEs, to staff these workshops. An explanation of what an OA is and the detailed description of each event for this process can be found in Attachment A, the Occupational Analysis Project Plan Draft. So following the OA, it comes the written examination development part, which will take about 2 years to complete. This second step includes 15 workshops requiring an approximate total of 200 SMEs. And you may find more detailed explanation and description of each event in this process in Attachment B for your information. OPS also mentioned that one form of examination would potentially be able to publish by the end of year 1 of this written examination development process, and the second form would be ready in the following year. The draft project plans also specify the role of board staff and OPS staff respectively. So in preparation for an OA, board staff is responsible to recruit and screen for qualified exam SMEs. And this process would typically need to take place about 6 months before the first workshop begins. And the written examination development follows immediately after the completion of an OA. So board staff would actually have to begin screening and recruiting for about 200 SMEs to meet the demand for all the workshops to develop a written examination 6 months into the OA process. The project plans also show the cost breakdown provided by OPES. So the initial cost estimates for an OA and written exam development is $74,316 and $101,024 respectively. So the cost to provide honorarium for about 232 to 240 SMEs are estimated to be between $69,600 to $72,000. And based on the fiscal data from FY 23-24, a projected estimate travel and accommodation costs for the number of SMEs required would be between $99,544 and $102,977. However, these costs may vary as the number of SME required is much larger for this endeavor. So the cost estimates for purchasing references are between $3,000 to $5,000. So these numbers are also broken out in the tables for an easy reference on the memo. And it is important to note that the costs I mentioned are just an estimate for development only, and it doesn't include the maintenance costs for the examination or any costs relating to administering the examination or examination accommodations. So for a point of reference, the exam administrative costs to administer the current California Law and Ethics exam, the CAPLE, is about $40,000 for a total of 994 candidates in FY 23-24. And we had a total of 1,744 candidates who took the EPPP in FY 23-24. So based on the information provided and explained by the OPES, so staff finds the pros and cons and listed them on the memo for the board's information. And this concludes my information report, and if you have any questions, I'm available to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chung. Fascinating information when it's broken down that way. Any board comment? Dr. Harpsheets?
Could you tell us again, one of the issues we've talked about is that if we did go this route, instead of adopting the ASPPB's EPPP2, is there a gap between when California applicants would be able to take it versus, like, in other words, would there be a time period where we wouldn't be able to provide a second level exam?
Right. So I will attempt to try to answer just based on the information collected. So it seems that the lead time will be about 2 years and 2.5 years, I would say the quickest. And there might be potential delays or like a gap because the requirements for the EPPP Part 2 is coming up, in 2026. So if we were to really meet that time frame, it might be very tight, or it could be potential gap because of the unpredictability in having enough SMEs for the workshop. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just on the discussion of delays here, you noted and in response to Dr. Harpsheet's question, you noted that there would be a 2-year timeline for development, but this is assuming there are statutory changes made in our Business and Professions Code, and on top of that, the relevant regulatory changes that accompany that statutory change. So, for clarity, and this is more a comment than question at this point, which is, let's assume that there is statutory language being pursued at the next legislative session that starts in December, or January, because we're in a 2-year cycle. Thank you. So 2025, and we're at sunset review. So it's during sunset with an implementation date because there will be no, as most laws are, the next year. So it will take effect January 1st of 2026. And then Office of Administrative Law and Regulatory Packages is another 2 years, and at minimum, likely 3. And then on top of that, there'll be a 2-year development time period. So if we were to move forward with an exam, we are looking at approximately 6 to 7 years. And the costs that are listed here, you would have to adjust for inflation at, I'll be conservative and say 3%, which is below what we've been experiencing up until recently. So 7 years from now, plus these costs, I think it's really important for us to just understand that 2 years is just a development timeline. It is not a timeline for implementation alone.
And just to comment on some of the cons that was listed here is the eliminating portability for California applicants and licensees who wish to seek licensure in another state. But also it will be similar, there's going to be delays for other licensees coming from other states who may want to service and provide service in California. If they move here, then they would have to they would have to not only take the CAPLE, but also take this other test whenever it's made possible. So that would also delay the possibility of quickly having some other licensees in other states from going to California and seeking licensure in California. So the portability works both ways. So if we're looking at access for California consumers, and not just like, for our licensees want to leave, the state and get licensed elsewhere. So the portability works both ways. It's going to affect incoming licensees from other states and outgoing.
Yep, go ahead.
This is like a long shot question that comes up periodically, but does anybody have any idea if ASPPB has any potential intention of delaying the 2026 implementation? Because of the outcry from other states. It's sort of like a hopeful question.
It's my understanding that the Board of Directors just recently discussed this issue and are confirmed in their position that January 1, 2026 will be a two-part national exam. So that was fairly recent.
But we're also updated of any changes. Like if there's any change of hearts and minds from ASPPB, from like what you're saying is like, a lot of concerns from other states and stakeholders, then we will be the first, we'll be informed and we'll pass that along to everybody as well.
And again, this is just an informational agenda item, so. Any other board comment? Let's open up public comment, please. If you have a comment on this item, please come forward and have a seat next to Ms. Chung.
Hello, Elizabeth Winkleman, again from CPA. I know many that the issues with EPPP2 have been discussed here for years. CPA has not taken a formal position on EPPP2. However, I wanted to mention that many of our members have raised serious concerns, including those who served on the EPPP2, the board's EPPP2 task force, that this really is an additional barrier to entry. There's concerns about the fairness of the test to various communities. It's a major added expense. It's not simply the expense of the exam. It's the expense of both preparing for the exam, which people normally take expensive preparatory courses for, and then further delaying getting a well-paying job after already most people taking on tremendous debt and many years of graduate school. So I just wanted to mention that, the impossibility, as Mr. Fu has clearly outlined, of really implementing this California's own exam, including serious concerns about portability of licensure. I know ASPPB has taken a firm stance on January 1st, 2026, but it is still 2024 right now, and there is a growing movement, I think, of people who are opposing this, or at least saying, keep it optional. It's been optional, and I think it's telling that very few states have taken on the EPPP2 as an optional exam, and I think of the few who took it on, a few, I believe, then reversed course and dropped it, or at least one. And it is the boards of psychology that ASPPB will listen to. The boards are the constituents of ASPPB. They don't have open meetings. CPA can't go to ASPPB meeting. A member of the public or a psychologist cannot go to the ASPPB meetings. So given that it is 2024, and this is a serious barrier to entry for our psychologists, and the board's own task force has raised numerous concerns, I think it's worthwhile, and other boards now have started to take some positions against making this mandatory. I think it's worthwhile, and I ask the board to consider this not a closed case, but to consider if they would want to look into, is there a way to raise concerns directly with ASPPB instead of just, waiting and seeing what ASPPB does. The board is the constituent of ASPPB. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Winkleman. Any other public comment on this item? Please come forward.
Hello, Board. My name is Dr. Norval Hickman. I'm a clinical psychologist in practice in California. Had my license active since 2012. And I've not been to one of these meetings where this has been discussed, but I can imagine there have been some heated discussions about that. So I won't take a lot of time about the apparent issues. That's why it seems like you all are considering a California practice exam. But I have supervised two black psychological assistants, associates, and this is a barrier. They look at these rates, and it really gets in their head. Luckily, both passed EPPP, the first one first time, the state law and ethics first time, but it was a lot of work as a clinician and a supervisor. So I think this is a path. As I've done my research into the EPPP2, I think there is sufficient evidence to support cultural bias here. And unless we're measuring or having measures built in, even now with the EPPP, I think the construct validity is questionable. I think we're all empirical scientists here at some level, and we need empirical data to support all of these tests, really. So, and I went through and looked at the executive board of the test makers. I guess now is Pearson VUE or VUE, and I have serious concerns about the lack of diversity on their executive board, executive team. So I'm not sure anything around equity and cross-cultural construct validity will even be considered. So I just want to say that I know this body. It sounds like you all are. I'm getting a sense of the page you're on. And this is just concerning in terms of the number of clinicians practicing psychology and providing psychological services in California. I'm swamped. So, yeah, this is going to make it harder. And I don't think we want to go this way as a field.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment?
Good morning. Dr. Melody Schaefer from Division 2 of California Psych Association, which is on education and training, and current chair of California Psychology Internship Council. I'm very concerned, as many are, about this issue, and listening to what Dr. Winkleman brought up, this brings further concern. For an organization of this magnitude, of this breadth, that represents every psychological association across the country, not allowing anyone to attend, including the psychological associations, this is untoward. For any organization to be operating in such constriction and almost secrecy as to how they make their decisions concerns me. I'm wondering if our board is aware of what board or organization they are given their authority by. In other words, is it the Board of Education? Is it the BEA? But who do they report to? And I'm wondering if there's a possibility of our board, along with maybe New York and others are not in tandem with the EPPP2 for all the reasons stated, to contact those organizations, those other boards, and together to submit some concern as to how this is moving forward. This can almost be looked at with all the EDI issues that have been elucidated, is almost somewhat of a restriction of trade in some unusual type way that's not traditionally described, and that they're limiting the individuals, as has been fully described by others, from proceeding forward with their career aspirations and suffering undue costs financially and time-wise to beginning their career as psychologists. So I don't know if the board has that information or is interested in pursuing that or would even know how to find out who they reported to. We had an issue like this with KPIC years ago, and we actually went to the organization that at a Washington meeting that gives the credentialing to the APA's education directorate that was overseeing some constrictions on some of what we do in California. So it was an education, but if we could have that kind of audience with an organization that would question that and maybe open up ASPB to be more responsive to the input that we have, I think that would be maybe a different route to take. Thank you. And while I'm here, thank you, Ms. Sorick, for all your years of all the wonderful work you've done. I know this is not the time to say it necessarily, but I missed it yesterday morning, and having coming to these meetings for 25 years, I just want to say you've been an outstanding representative in your position and always so congenial and helpful, and thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Schaefer. Any other public comment? Please come forward and have a seat next to Ms. Chung.
I'm Linnell Lynn, and I'm a psychologist. I live up in Napa. I'm relatively new, returning to California. Practiced in Texas for many years. The reason I practiced in Texas is because I couldn't pass the EPPP, the level that California required at the time that I had finished graduate school. And so I was practically forced to practice in another state because I couldn't get those 5 points that California required at the time, years ago, to be able to practice in the state that I had completed and grown up in graduate school. So I practiced in Texas for many years, 20 years. Was thrilled to find out that I could transfer in a few years ago because I needed to move back home to be able to care for my aging parents. Listening today to a new requirement that would have put an additional barrier in my way as a new graduate with a fresh, fancy new doctoral degree all those years ago. One more thing, I would have probably failed because of test anxiety, severe test anxiety by near points, even though I was teaching. Could have done the material in my sleep after 5 attempts. This just seems like one more barrier that would be put in the way of a new graduate that I experienced myself that forced me to live in another state for years. So, although this is emotionally kicking up something, as we all know in this room, is so easy to do because of trauma, it's hitting a nerve, and I felt that sitting quiet while we all discuss finances and timelines and inflation rates about logistics, that there's a very real emotional piece that can kick in with educational trauma that I wanted to lay out there. This is very real and can very much add to all the other pieces that young graduate students struggle with as they work so hard to get their dissertations done and their residency hours completed. I was one of those people 20 years ago. I had to leave my home state to be able to practice because of those 5 points. I realize it's different now, but it wasn't all those years ago. Just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment at this time?
Hello. Hello. There we go. My name is Dr. Muna Al-Shayab. I'm a licensed psychologist in California. I think I've been licensed for 15 plus years. I'm going to move this up a little tall. Something that I've been thinking about a lot when talking about these tests, the EPPP, now the CPLE, and now we're talking about another test, is what are these tests measuring, and what is it that we're trying to get at when we're trying to license folks in California? Are we trying to get at a baseline level of knowledge, a baseline level of competence, or something else? I know that years ago I spoke to somebody on the board about this, and they talked about, trying to avoid people having license actions because they weren't competent. So I'm not really familiar with the EPPP2, but what is it that it's actually measuring? Is it something that is needed? Is it something that we, it's an extra barrier? What is it that we're trying to get at in terms of licensing folks and making sure that they're competent? So that's something I think about. As I'm a hiring manager for my for people that I employ, and I think about that, and it's, I follow a structured thing. We look at, people who are licensed, and I want to say I get it right 50% of the time when I hire people, even with a very structured thing. So sometimes these tests can't always do what we want them to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any further public comment? Please come forward. Thank you for all of your public comments. We appreciate it, and we have been discussing this for a long time at this board. So we still have a few more years to be discussing this topic. Go ahead, Dr. Kasuga.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. I just wanted to have a very short comment as the chair of the EPPP2 ad hoc committee, along with Mr. Fu and Dr. Harbsheets. We are ongoingly discussing and in communications with ASPPB with regards the EPPP2, and part of it is bringing up all these issues that involve barriers to licensure and cultural issues. We've raised them before. We'll continue to raise them. We have them sometimes present in our board meetings to talk about how they are addressing kind of like these disparities. And we will, moving forward, continuously bring all of the concerns that our stakeholders are bringing in our board meetings, in our conversations with them, and we'll continuously invite them in future board meetings to have them directly interact with stakeholders. As like what you said, there is limited access to ASPPB, so part of that, the board, what we do is we invite them here so you can ask them the questions directly as well. So that's probably something we can consider in future board meetings.
That's coming up soon, so put that down and mention it, because that would be great, because a lot of people have a lot of things to say. Mr. Fu?
Just adding on to Dr. Kasuga's comments, a few things. I think this board has been fairly clear about our concerns with regard to the EPPP Part 2 skills exam. So there's the Part 1, which is the knowledge-based exam, and then the Part 2, which is a skills-based exam. And the skills-based exam emerged from the observations made nationally about the rise in disciplinary cases associated with skills. As Dr. Kasuga mentioned, you can watch Dr. Kasuga chair this 6-hour meeting from April 2018. So this is a discussion that this board has had over the last 6 years and continues to have, and that's why we have this item here. This board has continued to engage with ASPPB and asking questions. I think we've written at least one letter, if not 2 letters a year, sometimes more, asking for questions around costs with regard to the exam preparation materials, around need. There's an entire docket, if you will, of materials over the last 6 years associated with our study of this issue. And I encourage folks to review them. They're all public and available, and it's something that we will continue to closely monitor as well. I did want to acknowledge Dr. Yi Bradbury at UCLA, who has been a clear advocate for folks in the state in terms of making sure our board is aware of some of the actions taken by other state boards, including, I think, what we heard, Texas and New York, et cetera. So just wanted to make sure we acknowledge Dr. Yi Bradbury. And the last thing I'll say about ASPPB is folks who have been observing for the last 6 years, I have a lot of comments. But I do think that we should just make some clarifications given the comments we heard today, which is they are a 501c6 organization, a nonprofit organization that is similar to what we call a chamber of commerce or trade association. So they're not a state body. The second thing I'll just mention is that other psychological associations, such as the American Board of Professional Psychology, the Association of Canadian Psychology Regulatory Organizations, the Association of Psychology Postdoctoral and Internship Centers, and the Canadian Psychological Association send liaisons to the meetings of the ASPPB Board of Directors. And so I want to make sure that we're clear about who's able to attend and who's represented, and board members, including this board, when we don't have a travel restriction or a travel budget issue also attend. So Dr. Phillips has attended in the past when it was held in San Francisco with Ms. Sorick. And the other piece I'll say in terms of who's drafting these questions are being drafted by psychologists across the country, including psychologists here in California. So Pearson is the administrator of the exam, but they are not the drafter of the questions. They are the folks who make sure the computers are working and are timing you. But the actual drafting of the questions are done by psychologists from across the country, including the state. And so I think that's an important, despite our concerns and despite our desire to want to think that this is being drafted by two people out in Atlanta, Georgia, or near Atlanta, Georgia. That's the headquarters of ASPBB, for those who don't know. It's been a large group of folks doing this work. It's something that we've expressed concern about in terms of who's doing it. And folks have come out to our board meetings over the last 6 years from a broad representation of all segments of society who are in the profession, and this board will continue to express our concerns of all the things that we've issued in that task force group that Dr. Kusuga led. So I know we're not talking about this issue today, but I think it's important that we also are fairly clear on what's fact and what isn't, and given the concerns that we all have with regard to the Part 2 exam.
Well, thank you for the background, especially for people where this may be your first Board of Psychology meeting. We have been discussing it forever, I think, ever since I came on, so 2018 maybe. Any other board comment before we move on to licensing? Thank you, and thanks for all the comments. We appreciate them. We're going to move on to agenda item 18D, and this is going to be licensing report. Dr. Harb Sheets is the chairperson.
Thank you, Dr. Tate. 18D is the Barriers to Telehealth Survey follow-up, and our committee, the licensure committee, was asked to provide a document of some type to address the concerns expressed in the responses to our telehealth survey. And as we reviewed the survey responses, we found that there were several concerns frequently expressed, and they were generally operational in nature. We noted that there are already several very useful sources of information available to licensees that would contribute to the legal, ethical, and good clinical telehealth practice. And of particular note is the Professional Practice Guideline published by the APA, Guidelines for the Practice of Telepsychology. So as a committee, we recognize that trying to provide a new document, sort of reinventing the wheel, would not be particularly useful, particularly that in California law, we look at the APA Ethics Code as a guideline for looking at enforcement actions. So we determined that what might be most useful is to provide a list hyperlinked on our website of the various resources that are available to licensees in using telehealth in their practice. So we are asking for a motion and that the board approve that action on our part.
So moved. I second.
So any board comment? Seeing none. Any public comment? I don't see any, so Ms. Pertot, could you please call the roll?
Kusuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harb Sheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
Ms. Chung, could you talk about the proposed extension request guidelines?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Harp-Sheets. So item 18E is about the proposed changes to the extension request guidelines. At the board meeting back in 2019, the board approved the current guidelines, but staff is requesting to propose a minor language changes to provide clarity, as some registrants misinterpreting the guidelines in a way that will allow them to work beyond the 72-month registration limitation without getting an approved extension. So the committee met and reviewed the proposed changes at their meeting in July, and asking the board to review and adopt the proposed changes. So in the attachment, you will find that we make clarification language to state if a registrant has successfully accrued all required experience, an extension to a registration beyond the 72-month limitation is not warranted in the absence of a good cause as determined by the board. Back to you, Dr. Harp-Sheets.
Could we have a motion that we adopt the proposed changes to the extension request guidelines?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any board comment or discussion? Any public comment? Ms. Pritchard, could you call the roll?
Kasuga.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Fu.
Aye.
Harp-Sheets.
Aye.
Nystrom.
Aye.
Rogers.
Aye.
Tate.
Aye.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Agenda item 18F is about a new courtesy document that staff has wanting to provide to our applicants as a resource document. It is the weekly log for supervised professional experience. So some background is that the current regulations requires a trainee to maintain a written weekly log of all hours of supervised professional experience earned towards licensure. But from time to time, staff will receive some comments from a small portion of applicants stating that they were not aware of the weekly log requirement, even though it is a responsibility of trainees and related supervisors to comply with the regulatory requirements. So staff is thinking that providing a courtesy weekly log to be posted on the board's website would be a good tool to assist trainees to document their SPE hours and to help them to comply with the requirements pursuant to the regulations. So with the assistance of staff from the publications, design, and editing office, so we have created this courtesy weekly log for the board's review. And we also wanted to note that this document is not a required document, but to provide to them if a trainee elect to use it to document their hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ms. Chung. So they are required to keep a weekly log, and it is not always requested, but sometimes, so they have to have this available, all trainees. This log that we're providing is just a courtesy. They can use it, or they can come up with their own log. So we wanted to be really clear that it isn't that you are required to use this particular form.
Is this has this come up as an issue that people are unable to have
yes,
something? Because in my experience, in my program, we do have our own log. That's I don't know if each program has a log. So not all programs have a training log.
Some may not. Actually, some may not. And so there have been times, I know, where Ms. Chung can tell us that applicants have been requested to provide a log to determine what if there's been a discrepancy in hours.
Got it.
And they were not aware of needing to keep one.
Got it. So this will be helpful then.
Yes, this would be
for
helpful.
those that do not have that.
That don't have that available. Yes. So we're asking the board to direct staff to provide this log on our website.
May I ask a question, Dr. Harp-Sheets?
Yes.
I'm curious, are there electronic ways of doing this in other programs? So, for example, like, are there programs that may have more resources, I'm assuming? Is there an electronic logbook that then reports out with a signature, or is it still standard practice to be
Written?
written?
No, they certainly could develop their own programs that's a PDF fillable and do that. That would be great if people do that. Make it so much easier, right? Yeah, yeah. And so everybody's responsible for doing it their own way. And as Dr. Kasuga said, her program had a format that they filled out. I know the program I was in did the same thing, had a log we filled out. But it's interesting that people are not aware. And so this has a hyperlink in there to the regulation itself. Yeah. Yeah. Anything you wanted to add, Ms. Chung? No? Okay. Okay, could we have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other board comment?
I have one.
Uh-huh.
I know that it's been made clear that this is optional, but I guess I just want to encourage, when we have it available, that we publicize it widely and encourage the use of it, because it helps staff to have a standard process when they're receiving and reviewing information. And I appreciate the simplicity of the form. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Cervantes, the staff does not usually request this, only in cases of hours discrepancies too. But you're right, it would really standardize that process. Yeah. Any public comment?
Hi, Elizabeth Winkleman again. Thank you for developing this courtesy log. I do think that is going to be helpful. I had one request for consider modification, is that I think that one of the categories, which is the waiver psychologist under the Welfare and Institutions Code, is not included in the checkoff boxes for how are you gaining the hours, and I just think it would be helpful to consider to add that as well. Thank you.
Dr. Winkleman, are you saying where we have the other box that you would like us to add waiver psychologist, and then we'd have the other box?
I don't know if there are any others, but yeah, it's good to have the others. But since all the others are specified, I think it would be good to also specify the waiver as well. Thanks.
Yes, Dr. Melody Schaefer again. I'm assuming there's a good reason why it's not mandated to use this particular form to give everyone options. But I think part of what might happen with students and with supervisors is when they see that this is an optional form, that something gets lost in translation that's optional to collect the data. Mm-hmm. Because I've seen over and over with sites that the supervisor doesn't know it's mandated. So I'm wondering if it's a mandated form, just like our the SPE verification forms are, the VOE and other forms, then it's all a set. And then we won't have people kind of fall off the proverbial wagon and not complete it. When students go to another state that I've trained, this has been something very important, that they finally realized that the other state wanted to show verification that they had those hours. Even the VOE they questioned. So just a thought, and maybe there's a reason not to.
So are you saying that if we provide this, it will create some confusion?
No, I'm saying the form is lovely, and it's emblematic of what we've used in CAPIC, for instance, and at most sites and training sites I've run. So it's great. But you're saying it's optional to use the form.
To use this particular form, yes.
And when we deal with compliance around issues, we find that people don't always understand what the intention is. You see with the CPD, all the data that you provided and all the explanations, and still folks are confused. But anyway, back to this one. So by having the form say it's optional to use this, I think people still are confused about that. It is not optional not to collect this
Not
data.
to collect. And that's why
And it
we
keeps happening.
we had that same discussion at our licensure committee meeting too. And that's why we included the hyperlink to the regulation itself in the introductory paragraph.
One would think that would do
One
it,
would
right?
hope,
With all
yes,
that you're
one
trying
would
to
hope.
do.
Right,
So,
right.
just, and maybe
Yeah.
educating our public that when students leave and go to another state, that sometimes this document and having that data becomes relevant to whether they're going to accept everything from California, which is
Right.
ridiculous, but
Happens.
this is kind of what it comes down to. Anyway, thank you for the form.
Thank you. Okay.
What I took from that is it seems like there are still some supervisors that are not familiar that this is a requirement, and maybe we should provide more with the rollout of this courtesy form that we discussed that this is a requirement.
Yeah, that might be helpful in one of the board journals coming up.
Because
Were you going to say that?
It's a new article.
I know, a new article.
Yeah, there it is.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. No, but it would be helpful, I think. Yeah. So, okay.
thank you, Dr. Harbsheets, for your upcoming article.
My legacy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Would you like to write that article? Okay, let's see. So we have.
Dr. Harbsheets,
yes.
before, I just want to make sure, and for clarity purposes, that both Drs. Kasuga and Dr. Tate have accepted the friendly amendment to make that.
Yes,
one
I was
change.
going to
Okay.
ask that too, yes. So is that, you've accepted that with adding the word, the category of waiver psychologist?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Okay, Ms. Pertot.
Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harbsheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 18G is about a stakeholder meeting that we have discussed, and the history on that is back in 2019 during one of the licensure committee meetings. We heard a presentation from the Board of Behavioral Science staff regarding license categories that seem to have some overlap with a psychology license. And our concern was that public perception and understanding of what services licensees in each license category were authored to provide there might be some confusion among the consumers. So we decided at that time in 2019 to hold a stakeholder meeting to better clarify the roles of each license category and to identify how best to inform the public of what services they can expect from each license category. We tabled the stakeholder meeting during COVID, and now we are planning to convene that in July of 2025. So that is the update on that, and we are we looking for a yes, we are requesting that the board approve that stakeholder meeting as recommended by the licensure committee.
So moved.
I second.
Okay. Any board discussion or comments or questions?
I do have a clarifying question when it comes to the stakeholders. Who are so for the stakeholder meeting, who will be the stakeholders? So just clarify that.
Yeah, I think this is something we're going to be discussing at our January meeting, our licensure committee meeting. And if you have any input, feel free.
Okay. Yeah, this is definitely relevant to assessment psychologists that work with children, because then there's like some overlap with children that are receiving psychoeducational assessments that diagnose autism and ADHD, and who can perform those. So definitely those stakeholders would be important to attend. So that includes our assessment psychologists, and that do those diagnostic and psychoeducational assessments.
Okay, yes. Yeah, I think that's very important. And then I think one of the questions that came up also was, if someone does that assessment, do then they go on and provide therapy services, which under our ethics code becomes a dual relationship, and are they licensed to then provide therapy services? So there's a lot of questions that need to be addressed and to clarify.
Yes.
So, any other board comment or questions?
One of the things that has come to mind for me on this topic is school psychologists working in the K-12 system. They belong to collective bargaining units, and that might, I don't know if someone from CTA with expertise in this area might be a good stakeholder to invite, because they would need to help clarify some of the workplace, some of that. I think it'd be important.
Thank you. Yeah, that's useful.
Additionally, inviting the Association of Regional Centers would be a good stakeholder, the ARCA psychologist.
Good, thank you. Any other board comment or input? Any public comment? Okay. See none. Ms. Pertot?
Kasuga?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Fu?
Aye.
Harp-Sheets?
Aye.
Nystrom?
Aye.
Rogers?
Aye.
Tate?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are moving to agenda item number 19. This is recommendations for agenda items for future board meetings. The board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. To the board first. You had one.
I have three.
Ooh,
First
I
of
love
all,
it.
I would like to have another mindfulness activity from Dr. Rogers.
Okay.
And I would like to have ASPPB come back for on one of our future board meetings. And another thing too is normally we have HCI present on our August meeting, and they weren't able to come this time. Are they able to come in a future time to talk about possible grants and scholarships available to our licensees?
Yes, the reason why they were not able to attend was because of travel restrictions to come here today, but they can come to the next Sacramento meeting. So we've already discussed with HCI that once the meeting, the calendar for the next meetings for 2025 comes out, that we will communicate that to HCI, and they'll put that on their calendar to attend.
Mm-hmm. And would that be impacting kind of like the timeline for applying for these grants? Because I know they come a certain time during the year. Because if they come in February, and I understand about the restrictions, but it's past their deadlines, then it would be.
I know we've publicized on social media their application deadlines, so that our licensees can access that application. But aside from that, they will come to talk to us about the health of the fund because part of the renewal fees for our board go to the loan repayment program. So that's typically an August
Okay.
presentation,
Yeah.
but they weren't able to come.
Okay, well, thank you, and we'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, any other board suggestions for future agenda items? Going to the public, any public suggestions?
Dr. Schaefer, in my capacity as Chair of California Psychology Internship Council. As some of you may have heard, but we have not formally announced to the board that we are sunsetting KPIC, and I'd like to ask if that could be put on the next month's agenda, and if a little time could be given so that the board could understand the reasons why, and then the process by which we will unfold and continue on to closure, and how we will manage the data and the information that the students have gone through the process, so the board will have a way to communicate or have access to that in a way that's meaningful for the purpose of the work here. And especially because we're in your regulations, and not just the internship would be sunsetting, but the postdoctoral as well. Would that be something that you could consider?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great, thank you. A letter.
I appreciate that.
Oh,
Any other public suggestions for agenda items for the future? Okay, so I'm going to take this opportunity. We're all here for CPD, I get that, so I'm giving you more credit. So we have two individuals here. This is their last board meeting, and so I just want to give an opportunity for the board members to say their goodbyes to Ms. Pruteau, who's been at the board for the past 6 years, and she's moving on. And she's an individual who, just in my opinion, makes my job very easy, very smooth, and has always been helpful. So I'm sorry to see her go, but I'd like to open it up for other board members to make a comment.
I'd like to thank you, Ms. Pruteau, for everything that you've done. It is hard for me to imagine that I can't reach out to you to help fix a problem. But you, behind the scenes, you have helped us run so smoothly, and know that it's appreciated, and I wish you well in all you do.
Ms. Pruteau, thank you so much for everything that you do, like behind closed doors, and good luck in your new undertaking.
My thanks also for your cheerful way and always being willing to respond quickly. And you've been the person who just sort of has done a lot of things. So if I'm never sure, well, who should I call about this, I'll ask her, and you'll know. So thank you.
Ms. Pruteau, thank you so much for being such a bright presence on the board. I think about when I came for my orientation, and I remember how warmly received I felt by you. And every time I have had a question or a concern or I don't know what to do about this, I always feel confident in reaching out to you that you will not only be helpful, but be kind. I also appreciate your cheerful demeanor. That's always so helpful. Learning about the things that you're doing outside of the board has always been exciting to hear. And I'm so thankful that you've been on the board, and I wish you nothing but the best on the next leg of your journey. So thank you so much.
Yep.
I thought we were going in order, but we saved the best for last, Dr. Tate. Ms. Pruteau, just thank you so very much. I think you are the person who talks to Southwest Airlines the most out of anybody. And I'm pretty sure that they have your number on speed dial, given the changes that we all have to adapt to. And you have always been patient and have demonstrated grace amidst all the changes that we've experienced over the last 6 years. I'm sure a pandemic was not what you signed up for when you came to the Board of Psychology, and you supported this board and all of us through that process in a really thoughtful and kind, and as all my colleagues have said, in a wonderfully spirited way. And I look forward to seeing all the wonderful things you'll do in your next role. And I know that they will benefit from your brilliance and kindness.
And I'll just add, from day one, from when I started out on the board, you welcomed me and you were so helpful, and you know, kind of helped me maneuver the process. And so I thank you for that. I thank you for being lovely, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I really don't know what I text her all the time, so I don't know what's going to happen. But you might still get those texts. But I know you're going to be amazing in your next venture, and change is hard, but it's also fun sometimes. So don't forget that. And good luck to you from everyone here. Thank you. So the second person who's leaving is our executive director, Ms. Sorick, and she has been at the DCA for 20 years and at the helm of the Board of Psychology for 11. And she has been here, I think, with everyone the whole time. And so there are actually no words. She is just a stable, organized, conscientious, kind person who knows everything about regulations and interacts with stakeholders in such a genuine, sincere way. I don't know how we're going to replace you. I don't know how we're going to replace you. I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to do it. But I know for you, your next page is going to be amazing because you're amazing, and I'm going to truly miss you. Thank you. So I'm going to stop because I'll cry when she cries, but let's start over here with Ms. Cervantes.
Oh. Joining the board, this was my first statewide appointment, and I am so pleased that I had the opportunity to work with you, Antoinette. You're a model for public service in California, and the team you've led is exemplary, and that is why other departments across the state are stealing them. And it is quite phenomenal. And the culture you set, how we hear that stakeholder input, and it's not always fast. Sometimes it takes a few meetings, a few years, but it turns into the real regulation, the real change in policy and practice. It is a model that DCA should probably adopt in other boards. But thank you so much for your service and the inspiration to public service that you bring.
I know I said some yesterday, but 7 years ago when I started in the board, I just remember it was here in the Bay Area, and I think it was just like there was something that I needed, and you were like, "No, I'll personally do it." So you were like always hands-on, and I was like, "You don't really need to do it. You can have anyone else, like down the board staff to do it." But like you were like, "No, I wanted to, do it personally." So like you've always been like that. You've always been really thoughtful, really personal. You know what you anticipate really well, and I've gotten to know you so well in throughout the 7 years, and I hate that you're leaving before I'm done with my appointment, but I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy, and they're so lucky to have you, lending your leadership to, Magellan, and hopefully they appreciate they appreciate you, I'm sure. But yeah, definitely there, like what Dr. Tate said, there are just really no words. Like, I'm out of words because you've just been so meaningfully important in with the board and my service with the board. So, like, you'll be definitely missed, but please, we'll keep in touch.
So I want to just say there's three words. There's three words that come to mind about my experience with you as the executive officer. Is one, I really have appreciated the face of the board that you have created. And I think that having been licensed many years in this state and gone through different senses of how people see the board, how I've experienced the board, I was so amazed at how you presented the board to the public, to the licensees, and how accessible you have been as a board member and how quickly responsive. And it's made my experience as a board member so much more valuable and enjoyable. Thank you.
Trying to find the right words. I think my colleagues have already said everything. The word that comes to my mind when I think about your work here on the board, the first word that comes up for me is care. You deeply care about this work, and it shows in the way that you've created this culture of care with board staff. I think it has trickled down to how we care for one another as colleagues. I think we are really deliberative in the work that we do, and I think it's a reflection of how thoughtful you are and how attentive you are and how reflective you are about this work and the impact it will have. I know we have had this conversation about this being governmental work, but I feel like you bring a lot of heart to that, and it really, really matters. I appreciate how kind and how thoughtful you are in the ways that you interact with each of us. I think I had some ideas of what board service would be like, and when I got here, it was a pleasant surprise that it felt like there were real humans here, and I think that is reflective of your leadership, and you helped us navigate the pandemic in a way that appeared on the surface as unflappable. I'm sure there were lots of adjustments that you had to make, but there's a steadiness about the way you show up in this work, which I think has allowed us to be steady in the midst of a lot of change. So I just want to say thank you so much for all that you have offered us personally, all that you have offered us professionally. These will be very big shoes to fill. I don't even really want to think about it. But I just am so grateful. I'm so, so grateful. So thank you.
Ms. Sorek, well, firstly, congratulations on your new role. It is a testament to the level of experience and expertise that you'll be bringing to that new organization. And I say that being incredibly sad that you're leaving the Board of Psychology. All the comments that my colleagues have said, I fully agree with. And what I'll add is you're a problem solver. And in a world and in a place where sometimes no is the easy answer, you've always said, how can we make this work? How can we help? And what we've seen at the board is that transformation of having a leader who is a problem solver and who's focused on serving people. Our legislative and regulatory work, when you started, was, well, frankly, didn't exist. And through your leadership and the partnership with board members has become a robust activity where we have a lot of participation from our audience and also from our board members to identifying what's in the interest of consumer protection. When the desires for most folks to turn inward and close off government, you have made it open and taken the show on the road. So continuing professional development, which has been a decade-long experience for you, could have been done just in the halls of Sacramento, at DCA offices in a nondescript suburban building. And you have decided to take that across the state, where actively asking folks from all regions of the state to come to the board in a non-setting like this, but in a truly facilitated session where we can have real conversations. You have opened the board to that. And even in the most difficult times, we've heard a lot of issues around the length of time it has taken to sometimes process applications for licensure. You did two things. You first acknowledged the incredible work of the staff that is trying their best to move forward. And you also said, and we also know that this effort alone is not going to be able to do it. So we need to have a town hall, because we all know ideas come from different places. They don't just come from one person at the top. And you opened up the entire the entire board staff to have a town hall to participate in a meaningful way. And those are the qualities that I know make you an exceptional public servant, truly the best. And those are the qualities that I know Magellan will deeply benefit from. You are not a transactional policymaker. You are deeply relational, and thank you for your service.
I feel like we should have had Mr. Fu go last.
Most loquacious one, right?
All of the board members have said such lovely things, and I echo everything they say. You work with each of us wonderfully. All of your staff, you empower them to bring their very best every day. And it's just been really great to be part of this team, and I think every board meeting, every time I work with you, I grow, and that feels really great to me, to be in a space where I continue to gain knowledge. I'm going to be sad to see you go, and I love this experience or this next opportunity for you. It's going to be amazing, and just thank you.
I don't even know what to say, but I know Ms. Sorick might have a word or two. Or no. Oh, no, perhaps.
Okay.
Give it a go.
I'm going to try to keep it together. Whew. I'm very excited about this new career opportunity to grow. It would be a lot easier if I didn't like it here to move on. I have been so incredibly proud to be a part of this program. I've always said that, it's serendipitous that I'm here because this is where I went to school and graduated from poli-sci, and our graduation speech was about serving. And it's always been my goal to make sure that if I could be a part of responsive government and be open and transparent and make people feel heard, and not start with no, that's always been my goal. So hearing you all say that's how you felt this experience has been makes me feel very accomplished in that sense. So I appreciate you all for being a part of that. This has been such a wonderful board. I hear other programs that aren't quite the same, and I'm always very proud to say I'm connected to this board. You all are so caring, so thoughtful. You deliberate, you read everything before you make policy decisions. It's such an amazing, incredible program to be a part of in that way, and that inspiration trickles down to the staff. So thank you for all you have done to empower staff to inspire us and to push us in our work day to day. I just want to thank everyone for this opportunity. I want to thank staff for supporting me and being there for me, and I will miss all of you.
Thank you from all of us. And now, before I adjourn, Ms. Pruteau, can you let us know the CPD credit?
Yes, I can, and I wish you the best, Antoinette. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do. Moving on to this next chapter, and thank you, everyone, for the kind well wishes. I've really enjoyed working with everyone here, and I'm going to miss you a lot. As far as CPD, we're now at 1.75. So thank you for attending the board meeting today. You will receive 1.75 hours for your participation under CPD category number 1, attendance at the Board of Psychology meeting. For your records, please notate today's date as August 16th, 2024, the name of today's meeting, which is board meeting, and 1.75 hours. So if you attended yesterday, the full session, the corrected number of CPD hours you received for Thursday, August 15th, 2024 was 2.5, and everyone should have now received a corrected email that was in attendance. Yes.
Okay, I think we need to round up to 2 for today.
For today, we can
Yes.
do that?
Let's do that.
All right, so
Perfect.
thank you, President Tate, for that executive order.
I don't get many, so.
So we will change that to 2 hours
Yes.
for today
Yes.
under CPD category number 1, and 2.5 for yesterday if you were in attendance. So be sure to check the CPD resources available on our website as well, and thank you. Back to you, Dr. Tate.
Thank you, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you so much for coming.